Hey guys, it's Toniko Pantoja, and today I kind of want to talk about the topic of viewing your own creative work or art as products. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because there was a comment left in one of my videos about how nowadays a lot of artists just see their work as mere products, especially with the social media and online space, and how that's become a problem for mental health, self-expression, creativity, and how the online art community treat each other. And in some ways, I do agree with the statement, and in some other ways, I also don't see that there is a problem with viewing your own work or your own creative work as mere products. But I do think there's a lot more nuance to this conversation, and I'll get to that, because it all depends on how you view your own creative work and your overall relationship to it, as well as how you feel about putting it out there to the world. So, should you only view your own creative work as mere products for everyone to enjoy and to consume? Or is it just for self-fulfillment? I don't always see them as products, and I actually categorize the type of work that I do, other than them being mere products. And there's many good reasons to that. Something that a lot of us tend to forget is that we do creative work just as a means to, let's say, express, to relieve ourselves somehow, or to explore a curiosity. It could just be a message to a friend or a companion. It could be a statement for everyone to see. And of course, it could be whatever product you want it to be. So I do want to talk about the different categories of how I view my own work. So the first category is private work, stuff that's really just for myself, for my self-fulfilling self-expression. It's work that I'm not really going to put online at all or for everyone to see. It's just for myself, and sometimes maybe that's just for the best. Maybe I'll share it with other people, but again, this is just work for myself. Think of it as your own personal diary. It's really just there for you to work things out within yourself. And you're using whatever medium to be able to explore that and to better understand yourself. I know to some artists who are terminally online, this might sound baffling, like why would you continue to make art if you're not going to share it with anyone? But we also have to remember that sometimes creativity is just a way for us to express to ourselves. I usually put therapeutic writing down here, sketches and writing of ideas that I'm trying to explore, or something that's just self-indulging. Your work doesn't need to be shown to anyone else but yourself. Now, moving on to category 2, I would say sharing your art and your work with trusted acquaintances, friends. It could just be a small community or even a small server. Sometimes being an artist can be really lonely, so it's kind of nice to reach out to a few people that I respect and respect me as well, because sometimes we do creative work just to merely connect with someone. It's there to get support, it's there to sort of get feedback if we're trying to improve in our craft, or it's just there to entertain and to engage with other people. This could be works in progress of things I'm working on, or these could just be merely gags and inside jokes with my friends, or gifts from my friends. So I would say you're only sharing it with a few select people versus putting it online for anyone to see that you don't even know. Which then moves on to my next category. Category 3 is just online. You have a social media account, you have an online portfolio, and you just start putting your work out there for anyone to see. That's pretty much it. Instead of just a few people or a few friends, now it's online, it's for everyone to see. I feel like this category is for, let's say, building an online presence or just having a collection of work for your online portfolio so people can find you and they can have a reference of you and your work. And that's really the only criteria for category 3. And now we move on to the next category, which is category 4. You see your creative work as product. And what do I mean by this? I'm thinking about brand. I'm thinking about gains and returns, losses and risks. What I'm trying to say is you're making your creative work to get something in return. This doesn't have to be strictly money. It usually is the thought for a lot of artists, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be social media following or clout or likes or whatever. And there's sort of an expectation of you and the people looking at your work in terms of identifying your work, branding your work, and maybe even a quota. You might be chasing certain trends or recurring subject matter that might boost viewership. And I feel like there's a lot to be said about category 4 because now you're adding a factor that's going to dictate what kind of work you post online or what kind of work you show. So hopefully you can gain rewards out of that. But the issue with this is that it might influence your own creative voice to the point where it no longer feels like you. And you might fall into the trap of hating your work because it just didn't do well with people who view your work. So as someone who draws, who animates, who writes, and as someone who works in the industry where I do have to think about working for a product, I will say that it is highly important that you have work that's in category 1 and category 2. art that is for yourself and that might be in a secret stash, or art that is shared with a small community like your close friends. This might be a hot take, but I think it's also important to not have work that's highly influenced by other people, or you're making work for other people. You're just making work for yourself. And I think this is important to get a better sense of what kind of things you personally want to explore, what's your own artistic voice. And maybe you're just dabbling into a curiosity, whatever that is. Like, a question that I always ask myself when I'm creating something is, if I weren't making it for someone else, but I'm making it for someone like me who wants to consume the stuff that I make, what would that be? And some of these might be fully processed or whatever, so sometimes I just don't share it with anyone else. It's just for me. It's just for my entertainment. But I think that's a great way to have a better, genuine understanding for myself. And category 2 is important too, because I think it's important to share our work with someone, but I usually keep it to a small group of people where I can trust their feedback. I can trust their sort of responses and opinions, and if they want to contribute to whatever I have going, our viewpoints match. Maybe there's a piece of work that I have that I'm not sure whether it's good to, let's say, post online. I can get that feedback from my small group of friends. Making stuff can be quite a lonely venture, so I think it's important to have an outlet where you can share it with a few people. Now, I like to think of category 3 as more of the exposure tier. It's just there to have your work online for people to see, whether it's for portfolios, for you to establish yourself and your work. Or here's another way you can view category 3, which I talked about in the past when putting your work online. It's just to be done with the piece that you were working on. And there's really no expectations of what will happen when you put that work online. You're just done with it. Okay, now I do want to talk about something that no one really talks about, but I can also see an issue that a lot of artists struggle with, especially with their relationship with their work online. And I think that issue is when your personal work or work that's meant to be for yourself blurs with the idea of it being a product. So let's say I make creative work that I know is meant for my own entertainment, my own enjoyment, and also to entertain my friends. And let's say I post that work online to my online public space, then it starts getting a lot of likes, a lot of people following me, and a lot of people liking the work that I do based off my personal work. And so because of that, it kind of builds this sort of mentality that, oh, I'm actually doing something good for myself, and it seems that people like the stuff that I do, even if it's not meant to be a product that's meant to bring you benefits. But sometimes what happens is that, again, your self-worth of what you produce becomes aligned with how well it does in this online space. So let's say there's less engagement or less interaction with your work online. It builds a little seed in you that maybe you might be thinking, oh, I'm actually getting worse. I'm not good enough. And you might fall into the traps of, let's say, chasing that stuff back or feeling terrible about your work and kind of having a loss of identity within your work. Like, I'm saying this because it's happened to me where I was making stuff that I thought was just strictly for myself and I wasn't really expecting much from it. But over time, when things started not performing as well, it started to sort of like creep up on me where I had to step away from the online space a few times and just do my own thing without posting online. And I think that's also a reason why when I put my work online, the only good reason that I can come up with is just to be done with it. If something happens out of it, cool. If it gets engagement, whatever. But my only goal that I have in my head is really just to be done with something and to discover something new and learn something from what I did making that piece of work. So I do think it's good to have work that's more private and more for a smaller niche community, even if you decide to go down, let's say, this product route. I think that's one of the rules that I made for myself. Like, I need work that's just for myself and for my own entertainment, even if I'm working on a quote-unquote product. Another rule that I made for myself that has actually given me a bit more peace is that I have very small expectations for my work now. I feel like that's a whole other subject matter that I'd love to talk about in the future, but I think in terms of discussing art for yourself versus art for product, that's really all I wanted to talk about. Yeah, that's all. Bye. Interested in learning hand-drawn animation or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end? Have a look at the store where you'll find the complete Introduction to 2D Animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.